and welcome to The Harvest with me, Carmel Fisher, where we bring you the latest in capital market news, views, and clues.
In today's weekly roundup, we look at university protests, the biggest we've seen since the 60s. We also take a look into the proposed tax increases for 2025 by the Biden administration. We look at understanding inflation's impact on the stock market and concentrate on a little more AI developments, from AI-piloted planes to increased cyber attacks and the latest trends in cybersecurity. You do not want to miss this. According to NBC News, once champions of free speech, colleges crack down on pro-Palestinian protests. It's been a few weeks of arrests, suspensions, and cancelled commencements after another. What should have been a season for celebrating the waning academic year is being overshadowed by a tug-of-war between college students who oppose Israel's military actions in Gaza and university administrators cracking down on widespread protests. More than 2,600 students have been arrested across the U.S. in recent weeks, as universities that were once havens for free speech contend with escalating campus unrest, including violent confrontations with counter-protesters and aggressive law enforcement officers. More on a new poll that reveals surprising student sentiments.
Joining us now, the CEO of the data intelligence company Generation Labs, Cyrus Beschloss. His group is out with new polling first published yesterday in Axios, examining how college students are feeling about the ongoing protests at their campuses across the country. Cyrus, what did you find in your polling?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the steady stream of footage out from college campuses. We went into the field to test the assumption that this was the number one issue driving young voters. My company, Generation Lab, we have got the largest frame of young people, 2 million young people across the country. We did a poll of 1,250 college students across hundreds of campuses to see, how important is Gaza? We've seen the footage, obviously. What we found was number one issue, not Gaza. It was, number one was healthcare, number two was student debt, number three was the economy. Gaza came in last. So very consistent with the polling that you mentioned. I think the big thing to consider here is young people tend to look at this issue a lot like the rest of the electorate.
Follow on that was you asked these students, have you actually participated in these demonstrations on campus, and what did you find?
Exactly, yeah. 92% have not participated in those protests. It's only been everything that we've seen on the screens in the last few weeks. That's about 8% of college students. And so very, very, very slim minority. But of those who have not protested, which again is 92% or so, 4 to 1 or so are favorable, are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause.
We take a look now at the proposed tax increases for 2025 by the Biden administration. According to the White House fact sheet, the president's budget cuts taxes for working families and makes big corporations and the wealthy pay their fair share. Since taking office, President Biden has fought to build a fairer tax system that rewards work and not wealth, asks the wealthiest Americans and largest corporations to pay their fair share, and requires all Americans to play by the same rules and pay the taxes they owe. He has already secured historic legislation to make our tax code fairer, from enacting a corporate minimum tax so that billion-dollar companies can't get away with paying $0 in federal income taxes, to giving the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, the tools it needs to make wealthy tax cheats pay the taxes they owe. President Biden will fight to stop Republicans' plans to add trillions to the deficit, with tax cuts skewed to the wealthy and largest corporations. Republicans would rather add trillions to the national debt than take back even $1 of the $150 billion annual rate cut corporations received under President Trump. More from CNBC.
Biden released his budget today, and now we're learning more about how he plans to pay for his priorities. Megan Casella has brand new details on that. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Contessa. That's right. President Biden needs to find a way to pay for that $7.3 trillion budget he released earlier today. And it turns out he's going to be looking to corporations and the wealthy to help cover the bill. So some of these revenue raisers will sound familiar. The Biden administration says they'll be focused on implementing a 21% global minimum tax on corporations, on lifting the corporate minimum tax to that same 21% level in the United States, on quadrupling the stock buyback tax from 1% to 4%, and imposing a 25% minimum tax on individuals with a net worth of $100 million or higher. On the enforcement side, the president is pledging to close a handful of tax loopholes on carried interest, on estate and gift taxes, and on life insurance policies. And Treasury officials say he's allocating an additional $104 billion to the IRS to strengthen enforcement of the tax code. Overall, White House officials say their plan would raise almost $5.5 trillion in fiscal 2025, with roughly half the extra tax revenue coming from corporations and half from high net worth individuals. Now, guys, usual caveats apply. These are just proposals, but they do show us where the White House's priorities are, especially as we get closer to 2025, when former President Trump's tax cuts are set to expire. Guys.
Next, we look at understanding inflation's impact on the stock market. The economic landscape is constantly shifting, and right now, it's bracing for the impact of three significant inflation events. These events, largely driven by recent policy decisions from the Biden administration, are expected to send shockwaves through the stock market. They could have far-reaching implications for investors, businesses, and consumers alike. We'll delve into these three inflation events, their potential impact on the economy, and how they might shape the future of the stock market. The first of these inflation events is the Biden administration's announcement of a $6.6 billion grant to Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company, TSMC. This grant, essentially a gift, is intended to incentivize TSMC to build its semiconductor chips in Arizona. The overarching goal of this initiative is to shift chip production, which powers all artificial intelligence, from Taiwan to the United States. Now, the implications of this move are manifold. On one hand, it could potentially strengthen the US's position in the global tech industry by reducing its reliance on foreign chip manufacturers. On the other hand, this move signifies an increase in government spending, which is a key driver of inflation. As the government pumps more money into the economy, the value of money decreases, leading to a rise in the general price level of goods and services. This could potentially lead to higher costs for businesses and consumers, thereby affecting the stock market. The second inflation event is Biden's recent announcement of his next effort at student loan forgiveness. This initiative targets three groups of people: those who have been paying student loans for over 20 years, those who attended schools of questionable value, and those experiencing financial hardship. However, the specifics of this initiative remain unclear. For instance, it is not yet known which schools qualify as having questionable value and what constitutes financial hardship. Despite these uncertainties, this initiative is arguably expected to have a significant impact on the economy. By forgiving student loans, the government is essentially injecting more money into the economy, which could lead to inflation. Moreover, this could potentially lead to a shift in consumer spending patterns, as those who are freed from the burden of student loans might have more disposable income to spend on goods and services. This could in turn affect the performance of various sectors in the stock market. The third and perhaps the most significant inflation event is the release of the Consumer Price Index, the CPI report. The CPI is a crucial economic indicator that measures the average change in prices paid by consumers for a basket of goods and services over time. It is a key gauge of inflation and is closely watched by investors, businesses, and policymakers. Inflation bottomed last June at 3%, and it is expected to hit tomorrow at 3.5%. This anticipated rise in inflation could have a profound impact on the stock market. Higher inflation can erode the value of future cash flows, making stocks less attractive to investors. This could potentially lead to a sell-off in the stock market, causing stock prices to fall. And now for more developments in AI. Looking at AI-piloted planes, Pentagon wants thousands of AI-piloted fighter jets to support human pilots. The United States Pentagon has announced its intention to fund the development of a fleet of AI-piloted aircraft. The contract has gone out to tender with the plan to contract 2 private contractors to develop the craft. Called the Collaborative Combat Aircraft CCA project, it will form part of a larger $6 billion program to see at least 1,000 new drones join the United States Air Force ranks. The AI-piloted drones will fly alongside human pilots and help provide cover, escort, fire support, and scouting roles. To be considered, the proposed aircraft must be able to fly at least 30 feet above the ground autonomously and at ground speeds of 600 miles per hour. The AI-piloted drone fleet will need to be able to perform risky maneuvers and escort and protect crewed planes, carry weapons to attack targets on the ground and in the air, and act as scouts. The Pentagon plans to select 2 companies by this summer to produce the planes to complete hundreds within 5 years. Each plane is expected to cost between $10 and $20 million. To put that into perspective, a new F-35 costs around $100 million apiece, while a B-21 can cost upwards of $750 million per unit.
It's called Vista, an unmanned fighter jet piloted by artificial intelligence, flying head-to-head in a dogfight with a manned F-16, even outperforming the human pilot.
Defense officials say the U.S. is the only military in the world with this technology, successfully flying a jet with artificial intelligence. And this is the first time cameras have been allowed to see it.
Up till now, there has not been a pathway for machine learning agents to control the flight critical systems of an aircraft.
On Thursday, the Air Force Secretary made an unannounced trip to Edwards Air Force Base.
Where's it going to be?
Suiting up and going for a ride in a mock dogfight, flying nearly the speed of sound, separated by just 1,000 feet from the manned fighter jet. He says the technology still needs work.
We still got a ways to go with it, but making good progress.
But some test pilots aren't sure.
This artificial intelligence, this robot, and they're so new, and we don't really understand fully how they work.
So you don't trust the aircraft to be flown by AI at this point?
No, not really.
Like drones, they could fly ahead of manned aircraft during combat, conducting strikes too dangerous for human pilots. But unlike drones, the computer will be in charge, not an operator thousands of miles away. And even though humans will still be involved in making key decisions, this raises serious questions.
Is that a possibility, really, this kind of technology going rogue?
I think it's too early to say it is or it isn't.
Do you ever see a point of fully autonomous weapons? So U.S. Air Force aircraft that are fully autonomous weapons?
We're not going to unleash killer robots on the battlefield to kill anything they want. That's not going to happen. We're going to make sure that we comply with the laws of war.
Kendall says the future is not far away. AI could be in cockpits in the next few years. Computers flying missions once considered too complicated for anything but the human mind, soon changing the face of combat aviation. Courtney Kuby, NBC News, Edwards Air Force Base.
Now, with more AI comes more cyber threats. The landscape of cyber threats will include more sophisticated artificial intelligence techniques, such as advanced phishing campaigns and deep fakes, for which organizations must prepare.
Not good. And the pros who follow this sort of thing say, of course, the threats are increasing in this year in particular because of the election. So let's talk about it. Sean Henry is a former FBI Executive Assistant Director, leading criminal and cybersecurity investigations worldwide, and he's now security chief at CrowdStrike. Sean, I'm worried. Thank you very much for being here.
I think we all are.
Yeah. How worried should I be about these improvements in AI? What are the threats?
I think this is a major concern for everybody. AI has really put this tremendously powerful tool in the hands of the average person, and it has made them incredibly more capable. So the adversaries are using AI, this new innovation, to overcome different cybersecurity capabilities to gain access into corporate networks, but they're also using it through misinformation, the creation of videos, audio, text files that are incredibly believable and that have people looking at something, seeing something, believing that is true when in fact it's been manufactured, oftentimes by a foreign government. So, people always have to look at the source of information. You can't just look at something and accept it as true. You've got to verify where it came from. Who's telling the story? What is their motivation? And can you verify it through multiple sources? It's incredibly difficult because people, when they're using video, they've got 15 or 20 seconds. They don't have the time or oftentimes don't make the effort to go source that data, and that's a trouble. This is not just a U.S. problem. There are more than 40 democratic elections around the globe, Mexico, South Africa, Taiwan, India. Democracy is on the ballot. Democracy is going to be challenged globally.
That's it for your weekly roundup. Stay safe out there, everybody.
Available on Apple Music, Spotify, and anywhere you find your podcasts.